This is a poem by Emily Dickinson. I died for beauty, but was scarce adjusted in the tomb, when one who died for truth was lain in an adjoining room. He questioned softly why I failed. For beauty, I replied, and I for truth, themself are one. We brethren are, he said. And so, as kinsmen met a night, we talked between the rooms until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names. Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. Normally, as a booktuber, I like to make the videos and then post them right away or the next day. I don't like to have things scheduled far in advance. But in this case, I am making an exception to that. I'm not sure what date it actually is, maybe the 26th of October. But I am posting this, or I will schedule it to be posted on October 31st, a Thursday, which will be Poetry Thursday in BookTube land. It is also a date of some significance to me personally, in that it is the birthday, or was the birthday, of John Keats, the poet. In former lifetimes, I had blogs, one not under my own name and one under my own name, and I would always make a point of celebrating his birthday when it came around. It was something of a high holy day to me. I've been a booktuber now for more than a year, and last year when the day rolled around, I considered restarting that, but decided not to. I have reached an age where a lot of things are let go, and that is one of them, holidays and that sort of thing. But the confluence of events this year are setting me up to make it a perfect occasion to do a reading of poems by John Keats and have something of a celebration. We have a cat zooming, which may disturb things here. The first part of this, I hope to go into some prose, so hopefully he will settle down by the time I get to poetry. This will probably go on at some length. For the last while, occasionally I would, on a Poetry Thursday, give a poetry reading. So I am going to read poems by Keats. I have poems by Keats also up on a playlist at my channel. And I'm not really quite sure how this is going to go, but I pulled out a stack of books, and this is not all of them, containing different things which I might like to use to talk about Keats a little bit. As I say, nothing is cut in granite here. I will start with a couple of poems by Wilfred Owen. Wilfred Owen, we would say, was a poet's poet, and I think John Keats was a poet's poet as well. And so I'm starting with a poem which I did not bookmark. That's okay, I found it pretty easily. I guess that's why I did not write it. Now these two, I'm going to read two sonnets by Owen. I have a third that I considered, but probably in the interest of brevity, I should forego that. And now he's going to try to do something real dangerous here for a second. Come on. Come on. Come on. Our cat has brain damage from doing something very dangerous, as a matter of fact. But he's in a very precarious place right now for a couple of reasons. Come on, Doo-Doo. Don't think about it. Come on. Cats don't tend to listen that well. So these sonnets, and I'm not thoroughly familiar with this stuff because I haven't looked at it for a long time. Actually, any of this I haven't looked at for a long time. These are not the best poems by Wilfred Owen, but they are probably among his earliest, and both of these make reference to the poet John Keats. The very first line of this one, well, it contains the word beech. I just want you to know it's B-E-E-C-H, the tree. And this line will have an echo, I think, in a later poem by Keats, if I manage to read that. This was written in a wood, September 1910. Full 90 autumns hath this ancient beech, helped with its myriad leafy tongues to swell the dirges of the deep-toned western gale. And 90 times hath all its power of speech been stricken dumb at sound of winter's yell, since Adonais, no more strong and hale, might have rejoiced to linger here and teach his thoughts in sonnets to the listening dell, or glide in fancy through those leafy grots and bird pavilions hung with arras green, to hear the sonnets of its minstrel choir. 90 times again, when autumn rots, shall birds and leaves be mute and all unseen, yet shall I see fair Keats and hear his lyre. It's not unusual for a young poet to write a poem to one of his forebears, if you will. I actually have 3 to Keats in this book. I may read one of them. They're not very good. But one further one by Wilfred Owen, who also died, I believe, at age 22. Sonnet, written at Teignmouth on a pilgrimage to Keats's house. 3 colors have I known the deep to wear. 'Tis well today that purple grandeurs gloom, veiling the emerald sheen and sky blue glare. Well, too, that lowly brooding clouds now loom in sable majesty around, fringed fair with ermine white of surf. To me they bear watery memorials of his mystic doom, whose name was writ in water, saith his tomb. Eternally may sad waves wail his death, choke in their grief 'mongst rocks where he has lain, or heave in silence, yearning with hushed breath, while mournfully trail the slow-moved mists and rain, and softly these small drops slide from weeping trees, quivering in anguish to the sobbing breeze. And there is a footnote here that says begun on 21 April 1911 at Teignmouth. It's spelled Teignmouth. I don't know how to pronounce it, where Keats had lived from March to May 1818 at 20 Northumberland Place, formerly 20 The Strand. This sonnet was finished at Shrewsbury shortly afterwards. And there's also a note to remind you that his tombstone in Rome bears the words, "Here lies one whose name was writ in water." There was another poem which I thought about reading, and I'll leave it aside in case I decide to go there, which felt redolent of Keats, but I think you already heard some of that in those two sonnets. Now I'm going to shift away from poetry a little bit and just read a little bit of what other people have said about Keats. So this is from The Keats Inheritance by Robert Gittings, and this is from his author's note. During the opening stages of work on a new biography of John Keats, based far more closely than usual on original documentary sources, I became aware that there was one considerable area which had been neither explained nor fully explored in previous biographies. This was the problem of Keats's poverty. How a young man who had been well provided for in two wills, his grandfather's and his grandmother's, should find himself literally penniless before he was 25 and die at that age in debt to friends and to publishers. The special importance that this lack of money assumed in his great creative year, made the problem not merely academic, but intimately connected with his poetry. That great creative year is the subject of a book by Gittings, John Keats, The Living Year. It's really a marvelous book. I think I pulled something out from here, but I'm not sure what. It may take me a second. All that has been written about Keats has so far thrown up three main explanations for this remarkable year. None is satisfactory, though each may share a part of the truth. It is said that he wrote with the desperate energy of one already diseased, already attacked by the consumption which carried off his brother, that he met at this time a Hampstead neighbor, Fanny Braun, to whom he soon became engaged, and that most of his work in this year is connected with his love for her. Thirdly, that he was working out in this year some coherent scheme of poetry and philosophy, of which his works are the signs and symbols. The first two of these reasons have been vastly exaggerated. The third has been over-rationalized. Keats was in robust health during most of the coming year. His occasional illnesses have been shown on medical evidence to have little connection with the form of disease which finally attacked him. The legend that he early became engaged to Fanny Braun on Christmas Day, 1818, to be precise, is firmly embedded in the Keats tradition and has been repeated by writer after writer, yet it is only guesswork. On the contrary, all the evidence, including that of Fanny Braun herself, points to their engagement being long delayed and not taking place until well into 1819. As for his having any consistent scheme of thought and philosophy, Hesse's note on him as a man of fits and starts is supported by other friends. Gifted as he was, Keats was only 22, and his life was a series of rapidly changing states of mind rather than any rational scheme. Indeed, it is with surprise that Hesse notes how unusually rational he was on this one occasion. I'm not sure what that's referring to. Robert Gittings, in addition to this marvelous book titled The Living Year, John Keats' The Living Year. He also wrote a full biography, and I know I read it, but I don't remember the full biography. So I do highly recommend the One Living Year, but I'm sure a lot of more recent treatments have been done subsequent to any of this, which I'm going to bring up. But this is something of a trip down memory lane for me, and I thought I would pull into this other biography from which I've read a very good book as well. I should say for most writers, and this theme comes up in a couple of the things that I'm going to read, you don't need to know anything about their lives. And in fact, you, in some cases, shouldn't know anything about their lives. I generally avoid biographies. They are not of interest to me, except in the case of writers whose work I have loved. And in those cases, I have sought out biographies and other figures as well, but it's a rarity for me. But in the case of John Keats, knowing a little something of his biography does not hurt. It helps. I think I just want to read a little bit from the preface here. The life of Keats provides a unique opportunity for the study of literary greatness and of what permits or encourages its development. The interest is thus deeply human and moral, and in the most capacious sense of both of these words. For, to begin with, we have to do with a type of poetic genius that, whatever the handicaps or restrictions with which Keats starts, quickly acquires a personal relevance to a wide variety of readers. We find the steady growth of qualities of both mind and character that are equally appropriate to other forms of achievement, and that are at the same time being practically and dramatically tested in Keats's daily experience from the age of 21 to the end of his short life. The development of his technical craftsmanship as a poet proceeds simultaneously, a growth that interests us all the more because it is not something separate, but, as it were, partly a byproduct, at least an organically related accompaniment of his larger, more broadly humane development. This is one of the reasons why, for over a century, Keats has continued to strike so many readers and writers as the most Shakespearean in character of all poets since Shakespeare himself. Next, I thought I would move on to some Oxford lectures. This is E. de Selencourt, a beloved writer for me. He edited Keats. I've never had a copy of the volume of Keats which he edited. I think I saw it for sale in a used bookstore once, and it was a really awful copy of sorts. And I will just read a little bit here. Well, I'm not sure exactly what I had intended here. I'll read a little bit from one paragraph and then perhaps a little bit from another paragraph. For the study of no English poet have we ampler material than for the life and art of John Keats. Of all his chief and many of his minor poems, we have manuscripts recording not merely their final form, but earlier drafts or readings which enable us to see the poet at his work and watch the ripening of his inspiration. Keats wrote rapidly, but whilst many of his happiest phrases came to him in the first flush of imaginative vision, others came more gradually as he reviewed his work and realized that the words before him were inadequate to express the conception he had desired to shape. I'll go on further down here. We like to think that great poetry needs no external commentary, and that its appeal is immediate to all who have ears to hear. The story of the tardy growth of Keats's fame is a sufficient answer to this delusion. Keats was never, indeed, without warm admirers, even beyond the circle of his friends. And as we should expect, they were those whose homage was the highest worth. From Shelley, he won the noblest tribute ever laid by one genius at the feet of another. Even Byron recognized in Hyperion a monument that will keep his name. Landor and Lamb were alike eloquent in his praise. He inspired the youthful genius of two poets so widely divergent in ideal and method as Browning and Tennyson, and later still became the god of pre-Raphaelite idolatry. Yet, to the general reader, Keats remained no more than a name. Not one of his 3 slender volumes was reprinted. The first English collected edition of his poetry, reproduced from a volume published at Paris in 1829 for the continental public, did not appear till nearly 20 years after his death, and its sale was so slight that sometime later it came into the market as a remainder. So that gives you a little sense of the trajectory of his poetic career. Next, I will go to another Oxford lecturer, A.C. Bradley. The best of Keats's poems, of course, can be fully appreciated without extraneous help. But the letters throw light on all, and they are almost necessary to the understanding of Endymion and of some of the earlier or contemporaneous pieces. They clearly reveal those changes in his mind and temper which appear in his poetry. They dispose forever of the fictions once current of a puny Keats who was snuffed out by an article, a sensual Keats who found his ideal in claret and slippery blisses, and a mere artist Keats who cared nothing for his country and his fellow creatures. Written in his last 4 years by a man who died at 25, he's talking about the letters here, they contain abundant evidence of his immaturity and his faults, but they disclose a nature and character which command on the whole not less respect than affection, and they show not a little of that general intellectual power which rarely fails to accompany poetic genius. So there were reviews of Keats's poetry which really just tore him to shreds. And somebody, I think it was Byron, the ass, made a quip that Keats was done in by a harsh review. As Bradley was saying, Keats was made of sterner stuff than that. I think, well, I just dropped the bookmark, but he goes on to refer to, quote, Matthew Arnold, who said something, he said Keats had some flint and iron in him or something like that. I don't think I've read Arnold's criticism of Keats. I don't think I've only read Arnold's Culture and Anarchy. So, this is the edition of the selected letters of John Keats that I have also edited by Robert Giddings. And I read it so long ago. And there are passages that I have only the vaguest recollection of that were incredibly moving and meaningful to me at the time, and that I held on to and may have even copied out somewhere, but I have no way of finding them now or pulling them out. So I thought I would just read a little bit from one of his most famous passages. This is a letter to his brothers from 22 December 1818. And I will spare the bulk of it and just cut to the famous part. Now he mentions I guess a friend, Dilk or Dilke, D-I-L-K-E, I'm not sure. Come on. The zooming urge has not quite gone out of the cat, and the dog wants to entrap him and do the deed of love with him if he can. He can't. He's not quite the right size for that, but we're at a stage when the cat may decide to go find a perch and fall asleep. But anyhow, that is just distracting you from Keats, but the dog is really focused. So from that, back to Dilke, whose name I'm not sure of. I had intended to check that out before doing this. Well, why don't I go back a little bit and tell you about his dinner with Haydn. I dined with Haydn the Sunday after you left and had a very pleasant day. I dined too, for I have been out too much lately, with Horace Smith, and met his two brothers, with Hill and Kingston and one Dubois, or Dubois, I don't know. They only serve to convince me how superior humor is to wit in respect to enjoyment. These men say things which make one start without making one feel. They are all alike. Their manners are alike. They all know fashionables. They have a mannerism in their very eating and drinking, in their mere handling a decanter. They talked of Kean and his... Leave him be. Leave him be. Come on. Thank you, kiddo. Thank you, sweetie. I know. I appreciate it when you do the right thing, my boy. Okay, I got to get back to my booktubers now. Okay, we're going to the forest preserve in a little bit, my boy. Okay. Meh. They talked of Kean and his low company. Would I were with that company instead of yours, said I to myself. I know such like acquaintance will never do for me, and yet I am going to Reynolds on Wednesday. Brown and Dilke walked with me and back from the Christmas pantomime. I had not a dispute, but a disquisition with Dilke on various subjects. Several things dovetailed in my mind, and at once it struck me what quality went to form a man of achievement, especially in literature, and which Shakespeare possessed so enormously. I mean negative capability. That is when man is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. Coleridge, for instance, would let go by a fine isolated verisimilitude caught from the penetralium of mystery, from being incapable of remaining content with half knowledge. This, pursued through volumes, would perhaps take us no further than this, that with a great poet, the sense of beauty overcomes every other consideration, or rather obliterates all consideration. I thought next I would go to a little bit of prose by Keats, the introduction to I think, was it to this appeared with Endymion. Now this is the version that was published. He originally wrote something else, and his publishers dissuaded him from using it. It was a matter of some contention. I will just read the published version. This Penguin edition is very nice. Knowing within myself the manner in which this poem has been produced, it is not without a feeling of regret that I make it public. What manner I mean will be quite clear to the reader, who must soon perceive great inexperience, immaturity, and every error denoting a feverish attempt rather than a deed accomplished. The two first books, and indeed the two last, I feel sensible are not of such completion as to warrant their passing the press. Nor should they, if I thought a year's castigation would do them any good. It will not. The foundations are too sandy. It is just that this youngster should die away. A sad thought for me, if I had not some hopes that while it is dwindling, I may be plotting and fitting myself for verses fit to live. This may be speaking too presumptuously and may deserve a punishment, but no feeling man will be forward to inflict it. He will leave me alone with the conviction that there is not a fiercer hell than the failure in a great object. This is not written with the least atom of purpose to forestall criticisms, of course, but from the desire I have to conciliate men who are competent to look, and who do look with a zealous eye to the honor of English literature. The imagination of a boy is healthy, and mature imagination of a man is healthy. But there is a space of life between, in which the soul is in a ferment, the character undecided, the way of life uncertain, the ambition thick-sighted. Thence proceeds mawkishness and all the thousand bitters which those men I speak of must necessarily taste in going over the following pages. I hope I have not in too late a day touched the beautiful mythology of Greece and dulled its brightness, for I wish to try once more before I bid it farewell. Teignmouth, 10 April 1818. So next, to go into some poems by Keats. I have the cat sitting on the books. Now I've disturbed the cat. This is not one that I pulled to read anything to you from. It's mine. I just happened to have Microsoft Word sometime last year and put out an old manuscript of mine and decided to use for the cover the Spanish Steps, the view, I believe, from the window of Keats's apartment. The whole place has been turned into a museum devoted to him and to Shelley. So, finding the poems by Keats, well, I think I did earmark them, except for, with Keats, you're very well with a book like this, something slim that you only need a handful of poems. I mean, with Wilfred Owen, there are probably fewer than with John Keats, but you only need a handful of Keats. But if you grow to like Keats, then you will want to read more and accept the imperfections that you find as he disclosed in his introduction. So I'm just I'm hoping to read some odes and some sonnets and just restrict myself to that. And I don't have any game plan for the order. Well, why not? Why not start with his great one on first looking into Chapman's Homer? Chapman was a translator of Homer. Much have I traveled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told, that deep-browed Homer ruled as his demesne. Yet did I never breathe its pure serene, till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies, when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez, when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. He got his explorer wrong there. It was not Cortez, but Balboa. Yeah. Time for a claw clipping, my boy. Well, why not go for one of the big ones? Ode to a Nightingale. My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains 1 minute past, and lethe-wards had sunk. 'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou, light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beechen green, and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. Oh, for a draught of vintage that hath been cooled a long age in the deep delved earth, tasting of flora and the country green, dance and Provençal song and sunburnt mirth. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south, full of the true, the blushful Hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim and purple stained mouth, that I might drink and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. Fade far away, dissolve, and quite forget what thou among the leaves hast never known, the weariness, the fever, and the fret, here where men sit and hear each other groan, where palsy shakes a few sad last gray hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies, where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden-eyed despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his pards, but on the viewless wings of poesy, though the dull brain perplexes and retards. Already with thee, tender is the night, and haply the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry fays. But here there is no light, save what from heaven is with the breezes blown through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs. But in embalmed darkness, guess each sweet, wherewith the seasonable month endows the grass, the thicket, and the fruit tree wild, white hawthorn and the pastoral eglantine, fast fading violets covered up in leaves, and mid-May's eldest child, the coming musk rose, full of dewy wine, the murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. Darkling I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with easeful death, called him soft names in many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath. Now more than ever seems it rich to die, to cease upon the midnight with no pain, while thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy. Still wouldst thou sing, and I have ears in vain, to thy high requiem become a sod. Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. No hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the self-same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth, when, sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn. The same that oft times hath charmed magic casements, opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. Forlorn, the very word is like a bell, to toll me back from thee to my sole self. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu, thy plaintive anthem fades past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now 'tis buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music, do I wake or sleep? I'll go for something shorter, and in fact, I will pull out that sonnet. I said I felt I heard an echo in something that Wilfred Owen wrote. This is a sonnet of Keats that, of course, was early of importance to me as well. It's to, and then with an asterisk, at least in this edition, and the footnote says it's to a lady that he met in passing or saw in passing, something like that, 5 years before when he was someplace. So that is, here, it's actually a footnote here. That's where the asterisk, a lady whom he saw for some few moments at Vauxhall. Time's sea hath been 5 years at its slow ebb. Long hours have to and fro let creep the sand, since I was tangled in thy beauty's web, and snared by the ungloving of thy hand. And yet I never look on midnight sky, but I behold thine eyes' well-memoried light. I cannot look upon the rose's dye, but to thy cheek my soul doth take its flight. I cannot look on any budding flower, but my fond ear in fancy at thy lips, and hearkening for a love sound, doth devour its sweets in the wrong sense. Thou doth eclipse every delight with sweet remembering, and grief unto my darling joys dost bring. Sorry for the slip up there. I haven't read that one in a long time. As with any of these, I haven't read in a long time, unless I've read something on the channel, which I have. But a poem like the Ode to a Nightingale is the sort that has seeped into my person. And this one, you hear him echoing Shakespeare a little bit there. I cannot look upon the roses die, but to thy cheek my soul doth take its flight. Something one might find in Shakespeare. Let me read the two sonnets on fame. Fame, like a wayward girl, will still be coy to those who woo her with too slavish knees, but makes surrender to some thoughtless boy, and dotes the more upon a heart at ease. She is a gypsy, will not speak to those who have not learnt to be content without her, a jilt whose ear was never whispered close, but who thinks they scandal her who talk about her. A very gypsy is she, Nilus born, sister-in-law to jealous Potiphar. Ye lovesick bards, repay her scorn for scorn. Ye artists lovelorn, madmen that ye are, make your yet best bow to her and bid adieu. Then if she likes it, she will follow you. I think I'm getting worse and worse as I go on. The word close all threw me because I never know if it's close or close. I think whose ear was never whispered close or close. I've never figured that one out. Though it rhymes with those, and you would think close, whispered close, but then why would it not be whispered closed? So that's troubled me. And I don't think Keats was afraid of the off rhyme. Regardless. Let me take a break before I go on to the next sonnet on fame. I'll read you one of my own. I know it's kind of goofy to jam myself in there among Keats, but this poem for Keats, which reports my younger self's conception or desire for fame, probably is fit, sandwiched between his two great sonnets on fame. Fair youth, beneath the trees, thou didst not live to see the wanton fame come after thee. But having learnt thy measure, she could give pale sustenance to thy sad reverie. Would I could be so steadfast. I had rather to have such fame as Michelangelo did write of Dante, he who is my father, the world's most splendid portion all forego. The petty pleasures of this life and gains mean nothing, but to have that kind of honor posterity has paid thee for thy pains. Of my last comfort I would be the donor, accept obscurity and lamentation, than like an Alexander rule a nation. Now back to the second sonnet on fame. And he prefaces it with a little, what is that called, an epithet? I can't remember these words. You cannot eat your cake and have it too, proverb. And that, incidentally, is the exact phrase by which they caught the Unabomber. He was caught because his brother turned him in. And he used that proverb in exactly that way, and in his manifesto, he wrote it that way. And his brother, reading it, saw that and thought that his brother might be the man, and so he tipped off the FBI. How fevered is the man who cannot look upon his mortal days with temperate blood, who vexes all the leaves of his life's book and robs his fair name of its maidenhood. It is as if the rose should pluck herself, or the ripe plum finger its misty bloom, as if a naiad, like a meddling elf, should darken her pure grot with muddy gloom. But the rose leaves herself upon the briar, for winds to kiss and grateful bees to feed, and the ripe plum still wears its dim attire. The undisturbed lake has crystal space. Why then should man, teasing the world for grace, spoil his salvation for a fierce miscreed? And that line, it is as if the rose should pluck herself. It reminds you of I don't know if it's something in Shakespeare or if it's in his Eve of St. Agnes, should close and be a bud again, as if it's probably Keats. And you see the difference. A great poet's early poems may be very good, but they don't have that tightness of those rarities, those precious few that skyrocket themselves into the highest ether of the greatest poetry, and but yet they're all worth looking at. I begun with a poem by Emily Dickinson. Who, of course, read Keats. I believe she may have read Wordsworth as well. And she died for beauty, but was scarce adjusted in the tomb, till one who died for truth was lain in an adjoining room, and so forth. Ode on a Grecian Urn. Thou still unravished bride of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time, sylvan historian, who canst thus express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme. What leaf-fringed legend haunts about thy shape, of deities or mortals or of both, in Tempe or the dales of Arcady? What men or gods are these? What maidens loath? What mad pursuit? What struggle to escape? What pipes and timbrels? What wild ecstasy? Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipes, play on, not to the sensual ear, but more endeared, pipe to the spirit ditties of no tone. Fair youth, beneath the trees, thou canst not leave thy song, nor ever can those trees be bare. Bold lover, never, never canst thou kiss, though winning near the goal. Yet do not grieve, she cannot fade, though thou hast not thy bliss. Forever wilt thou love, and she be fair. Ah, happy, happy boughs that cannot shed your leaves, nor ever bid the spring adieu, and happy melodist unwearied, forever piping songs forever new. More happy love, more happy, happy love, forever warm and still to be enjoyed, forever panting and forever young, all breathing human passion far above, that leaves a heart high sorrowful and cloyed, a burning forehead and a parching tongue. Who are these coming to the sacrifice? To what green altar, O mysterious priest, leadst thou that heifer lowing at the skies, and all her silken flanks with garlands dressed? What little town by river or seashore, or mountain built with peaceful citadel, is emptied of this folk this pious morn. And little town, thy streets forevermore will silent be, and not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can e'er return. O Attic shape, fair attitude, with breed of marble men and maidens overwrought, with forest branches and the trodden weed, thou silent form, dost tease us out of thought as doth eternity, cold pastoral. When old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other woe than ours, a friend to man, to whom thou sayest, beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know. I'm about at the 1 hour mark, and I perhaps should leave off there, but I'm not going to. I'm going to keep on a little longer yet. Even 90 minutes of Keats is not too much, and you can always pause the video. I want to do To Autumn. It's always struck me as particularly apt that Keats was born in autumn. But first, let's give it to Ode on Melancholy. This is a poem. They don't quite know the order the stanzas are supposed to be in unless further forensics have proven something. And I believe he canceled out the first stanza of it. It's actually quite a marvelous stanza in its way, but I will respect the way it has come down to us. Ode on Melancholy. No, no, go not to Lethe, neither twist wolf's bane, tight-rooted for its poisonous wine, nor suffer thy pale forehead to be kissed by nightshade, ruby grape of Proserpine. Make not your rosary of yew-berries, nor let the beetle nor the death moth be your mournful Psyche, nor the downy owl a partner in your sorrow's mysteries. For shade to shade will come too drowsily, and drown the wakeful anguish of the soul. But when the melancholy fit shall fall, sudden from heaven like a weeping cloud, that fosters the droop-headed flowers all, and hides the green hill in an April shroud, then glut thy sorrow on a morning rose, or on the rainbow of the salt sand wave, or on the wealth of globed peonies. Or if thy mistress some rich anger shows, imprison her soft hand, and let her rave, and feed deep, deep upon her peerless eyes. She dwells with beauty, beauty that must die, and joy whose hand is ever at his lips, bidding adieu, and aching pleasure nigh, turning to poison while the bee-mouth sips. Aye, in the very temple of delight, veiled melancholy has her sovereign shrine. Though seen of none, save him whose strenuous tongue can burst joy's grape against his palate vine, his soul shall taste the sadness of her might and be among her cloudy trophies hung. No, that's not the one that they don't know the order of. I think it's a different one, the Ode on Indolence, I think, which I will not read. Now let me break it up again with something longer by William Butler Yeats, Ego Dominus Tuus. I did a goofy thing when I recorded that for my channel. You'll find it in the playlist, of course, but it is a dialogue between two, and I'm not going to bother with the back and forth. You should be able to pick it up. I will make a pause. This is perhaps longer than is due for a video about Keats, but I think that what Yeats had to say, and so many poets have had things to say about Keats, but what Yeats had to say merits inclusion. But I won't give you an excerpt, I'll give you the full poem. Ego dominus tuus. On the gray sand beside the shallow stream, under your old wind-beaten tower, where still a lamp burns on beside the open book that Michael Robartes left, you walk in the moon, and though you have passed the best of life, still trace, enthralled by the unconquerable delusion, magical shapes. By the help of an image, I call to my own opposite, summon all that I have handled least looked upon. And I would find myself and not an image. That is our modern hope, and by its light, we have lit upon the gentle, sensitive mind and lost the old nonchalance of the hand. Whether we have chosen chisel, pen, or brush, we are but critics, or but half create, timid, entangled, empty, and abashed, lacking the countenance of our friends. And yet, the chief imagination of Christendom, Dante Alighieri, so utterly found himself that he has made that hollow face of his more plain to the mind's eye than any face but that of Christ. And did he find himself, or was the hunger that had made it hollow, a hunger for the apple on the bough most out of reach? And is that spectral image the man that Lapo and that Guido knew? I think he fashioned from his opposite an image that might have been a stony face staring upon a Bedouin's horsehair roof from doored and windowed cliff, or half upturned among the coarse grass and the camel dung. He set his chisel to the hardest stone, being mocked by Guido for his lecherous life, derided and deriding, driven out to climb that stair and eat that bitter bread. He found the unpersuadable justice. He found the most exalted lady loved by a man. Yet surely there are men who have made their art out of no tragic war, lovers of life, impulsive men that look for happiness and sing when they have found it. No, not sing, for those that love the world serve it in action, grow rich, popular, and full of influence, and should they paint or write, still it is action, the struggle of the fly in marmalade. The rhetorician would deceive his neighbors, the sentimentalist himself, while art is but a vision of reality. What portion in the world can the artist have who has awakened from the common dream but dissipation and despair? And yet, no one denies to Keats' love of the world. Remember his deliberate happiness. His art is happy, but who knows his mind? I see a schoolboy when I think of him, with face and nose pressed to a sweet shop window. For certainly he sank into his grave, his senses and his heart unsatisfied, and made, being poor, ailing, and ignorant, shut out from all the luxury of the world, the coarse-bred son of a livery stable keeper. Luxuriant song. Why should you leave the lamp burning alone beside an open book and trace these characters upon the sands? A style is found by sedentary toil and by the imitation of great masters. Because I seek an image, not a book, these men that in their writings are most wise own nothing but their blind, stupefied hearts. I call to the mysterious one who yet shall walk the wet sands by the edge of the stream, and look most like me, being indeed my double, and prove of all imaginable things the most unlike, being my anti-self, and standing by these characters disclose all that I seek, and whisper it as though he were afraid the birds who cry aloud their momentary cries before it is dawn would carry it away to blasphemous men. That is from 1917, and that part, the mysterious one who yet shall walk wet sands by the edge of the stream and look most like me, indeed being my double. God, that sounds like T.S. Eliot in the quartets, that one passage, the passage with the Dantean lines, which took him more struggle to write than any lines Eliot had ever written. God, that is so similar there. And I am supposing that Eliot got it from Yeats, but it could very well be the other way. But I think the quartets come later than this poem by Yeats, though one indeed never knows. So that line where Yeats says, what is that? To climb that stair and eat that bitter bread. That is a quote or paraphrase of Dante, something famous he said, which Dorothy Sayers referred to as his pinching poverty. I don't know that Keats ever had the chance to get to Dante. Well, let's give Keats a few more poems and then see where we get some sonnets. I don't know that they printed in here that little one that's unrhymed that is so beautiful. That living hand. Let me see if they have it here. I'll do that first. Yeah, 459. Just something he wrote on the fly of a book or something like that on the inner leaf. This living hand, now warm and capable of earnest grasping, would, if it were cold and in the icy silence of the tomb, so haunt thy days and chill thy dreaming nights, that thou would wish thine own heart dry of blood, so in my veins red life might stream again, and thou be conscience calmed. See, here it is. I hold it towards you. And then some sonnets. Possibly the first sonnet by Keats that I remember. That I remember reading or hearing. When I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain, before high-piled books in charactery hold like rich garners the full ripened grain, when I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance, and think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hand of chance. And when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more, never have relish in the fairy power of unreflecting love, then on the shore of the wide world I stand alone and think, till love and fame to nothingness do sink. Pardon me. And that's a perfect example of a poem where knowing something of his life doesn't hurt. As in one of the ones that I read with that line, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies. And you know the story. Well, why not do On the Sea? This is a tough one, and I don't know if I'll be able to do this one all right, but On the Sea. It keeps eternal whisperings around desolate shores, and with its mighty swell gluts twice 10,000 caverns, till the spell of Hecate leaves them their old shadowy sound. Often 'tis in such gentle temper found, that scarcely will the very smallest shell be moved for days from where it sometime fell, when last the winds of heaven were unbound. O ye who have your eyeballs vexed and tired, feast them upon the wideness of the sea. O ye whose ears are dinned with uproar rude, or fed too much with cloying melody, sit ye near some old cavern's mouth and brood, until ye start as if the sea nymphs choired. One feels that he read Charlotte Smith, but in a poem like this, I think you can see what raises a sonnet by Keats above one of Smith's. As wonderful though her seaside sonnets, so many of them be, they are marvelous poems, and I don't care to denigrate Charlotte Smith to bolster Keats. Keats doesn't need my bolstering regardless. I'm just going to keep going. To sleep. O soft embalmer of the still midnight, shutting with careful fingers and benign our gloom-pleased eyes, embowered from the light, and shaded in forgetfulness divine. O soothest sleep, if so it please thee, close in midst of this thine hymn my willing eyes, or wait the Amen, ere thy poppy throws around my bed its lulling charities. Then save me, or the passed day will shine upon my pillow, bleeding many woes. Save me from curious conscience that still lords its strength for darkness, burrowing like a mole. Turn the key deftly in the oiled wards, and seal the hushed casket of my soul. I hardly know that poem because I barely read it, but this next one is another one which I have loved dearly. Why did I laugh tonight? No voice will tell. No god, no demon of severe response deigns to reply from heaven or from hell. Then to my human heart I turn at once. Heart, thou and I are here sad and alone. I say, why did I laugh? O mortal pain, O darkness, darkness, ever must I moan, to question heaven and hell and heart in vain. Why did I laugh? I know this being's lease, my fancy to its utmost blisses spreads. Yet would I on this very midnight cease, and the world's gaudy ensigns see in shreds. Verse, fame, and beauty are intense indeed, but death intenser. Death is life's high meed. And then the sonnet he wrote on the inside cover of a book, I think a book that he gave to Fanny. Sorry, my voice is giving out. Bright star, Would I were steadfast as thou art, not in lone splendor hung aloft the night, and watching with eternal lids apart, like nature's patient, sleepless eremite, the moving waters at their priest-like task of pure ablution round earth's human shores, or gazing on the new soft fallen mask of snow upon the mountains and the moors. No, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in a sweet unrest. Still to hear her tender taken breath, and so live ever, or else swoon to death. I just need to shake it out a bit. I will make the last poem his ode to autumn. John Keats, having been born on October 31st. I'm not sure what year it was. You can look that up. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath and all its twined flowers. And sometimes, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press, with patient look, thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too, while barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows, borne aloft, or sinking as the light wind lives or dies, and full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. Well, I'm sorry that I mucked that up. I'll do it one more time and then close. To autumn. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath and all its twined flowers. And sometimes, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look, thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them. Thou hast thy music too, while barred clouds bloom the soft dying day and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows, borne aloft, or sinking as the light wind lives or dies. And full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the red breast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. Sorry, almost completely mucked it up on the second time. It takes something out of you. I've told so many times the story of the first time that I read The Eve of St. Agnes by John Keats. Read it halfway and fell back exhausted. So this is my tribute, I guess, my booktube tribute to John Keats on his birthday, being recorded some days in advance of it. We are on the cusp of an election, and we don't know what is going to happen. Things fall apart, as William Butler Yeats wrote. We don't know what is going to be happening soon. I expect in the days following the election that this channel will fall silent for a time. And I don't believe that I will make doing a birthday video for John Keats a feature of this channel if this channel continues on into the future. But I felt that the time was right to do one today. I wish I had some deeper thoughts to end this with. There's Mr. John Keats, five feet tall, or whatever it was. I think that's, oh yeah, and then the other book had him on it as well. This, I think you see this one a lot too. I think this is one that was actually done by somebody. Does it say? You see, I don't know these things. Steve Donahue would know everything about all of these things. I mean, this I think is like something fanciful, possibly. I'm not sure. Well, it says it's a miniature of Keats by Joseph Severn. So I guess that is Keats then. I think Severn was the man who was with him when he died, just outside of those Spanish steps, which I showed you, the Spanish steps. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.